Welcome to the last podcast of September. It is September 28th. I'm George. I'm joined as usual by my dear friend, Dr. Eric Eager. We have a very special podcast today. This is going to be a wonderful podcast. You'll want to stick around till the end. I can promise you that. We are going to do, I've heard rumors that we have some special guests joining us, one of whom may have been a former quarterback for the Packers, maybe going to jail soon. Rumor has it they're joining the podcast today. It's going to be a good one. We are going to pick a lock of the week. Will it involve a Patrick Mahomes touchdown prop? He has left
I don't think so.
He has left us dry. We will get Eric's assessment after viewing the game live, seeing him live. And it's going to be a great ending as well. So stick around. Let's rock. I want to start off by asking you, Brett, just your reactions. Did you or did you not steal money from the good people of the United States of America for your own good?
Maybe. I just think it's a total maybe on Favre there. The great story here, if we're going to tell stories this show, I do want to tell a story. The 2020 Super Bowl, we were in Miami. And, it was the first Super Bowl I attended, and I was starstruck. And in fact, I was on the escalator with Brett Favre.
Yes.
And Brett Favre was wearing a University of Southern Miss women's volleyball t-shirt.
Yes.
And now I get it. It all comes back like you support.
It all comes full circle. I remember that.
You think I support University of Southern Miss volleyball, but in reality, the poor people of Mississippi, you support them. You support them, and we thank you.
Yeah,
I was
consummate gentleman.
He was wearing Wranglers, some like dusty ass shoes, and a University of Southern Miss women's volleyball t-shirt.
It was. I remember that. Obviously, remember that trip. I'm sure we'll get into some more stories there at some point here, but that was striking that he was wearing that shirt. It did not, let's put it this way. It was in Miami. For members of the press that have been in Miami, you don't see a lot of University of Southern Miss t-shirts walking around the VIP section of Miami. So let's put it this way. We should have seen the writing on the t-shirt, I guess. Before we get started and get into this slate, a quick reminder for everyone out there. Go download the PFF app and get all of PFF's content delivered right into your phone. Tap away. Betting, fantasy football, news. We have a new news team that is delivering you what you need to hear and the analysis behind it. And you can get it right now, by the way, for free. Download it in the PFF or in the App Store by searching PFF and go get yourself some of that betting advice, fantasy advice, whatever it is that you need, and do so ASAP. As a reminder, I read all of the good reviews that come through, the 5-star reviews, of course. So leave us a 5-star review, hashtag members of the press, printing press, whatever floats your boat, maybe a little printer emoji, and we'll read the best ones.
By the way, that was my gift to you as somebody who, we're, the printing emoji I felt like was like emblematic of our friendship. It was perfect.
Do we need to get hats made? We need to get something with a.
By the way, that bet
emoji.
won by 2 touchdowns.
Yes, it did. And the teasers continue to play. By the way, okay, let's get into this slate. Do I say this every year, or like is this year particular? And there's a lot of just bad games. Like I was looking at this slate, and I mean, each of us are in the Circa Millions contest. And last week I was like, my God, this is going to be miserable. The week prior, I was like, my God, this is going to be miserable. And here sitting again, I can there are like 3 decent games and then just a bunch of what feels like weird meh matchups.
Yeah. that's why I like to go to games on Sundays sometimes because shit, and Colts Chiefs was an abomination of a game.
Mhm.
I'll just say. So, but yeah, this week, I mean, look, Saints Vikings should be okay, especially if Dalton plays. I think that'll be a fairly even game. Two teams that are going to compete for the playoffs in the NFC. Bills Ravens will be great. Jacksonville Philadelphia will be good. So at least in like the 1:00 slate, you have two games that are fairly good. Seattle, Detroit, whatever. Detroit's going to be banged up. But then that 4:00 slate, my God, you have
What is that?
New England, Green Bay. Like I'm taking a net. Like now that now that my Sundays are a little bit more open, I guess I'm taking a nap during Raiders, Broncos, Cardinals, Panthers, New England without Mac Jones, possibly Green Bay. Like, good Lord. And, honestly, if I hadn't been traveling so much over the past couple of weeks, like I would have gone to Minneapolis and watched Chiefs Bucks, but that there's a dearth in that 4:00 hour. And look, I like Rams Niners on Monday night. I think that'll be a good game, but that 4:00 slate in the Sunday games, my brothers in Christ couldn't flex Jacksonville, Philly into that.
Right. I was so surprised that we didn't get, Buffalo, Baltimore should be one of the most looked forward to games of the season thus far. You have the two front runners, probably along with Jalen Hurts for MVP. You have arguably two of the three best offenses so far. I think maybe not arguably. And you have this interesting kind of scenario where you have Lamar Jackson is the guy that's already won the MVP, but in some ways he's the one proving himself here in this game. And I think it's fascinating. And yet, Eric, it is stacked right next to the likes of Wentz versus Rush, Fields versus Jones, Brissett versus Mariota. Wilson. Wilson. We have Zach Wilson coming back too, by the way. We haven't talked about that yet. We will here in a second. Versus Trubisky. It's really kind of brutal. But let's talk about the Thursday game, because that one I think is also compelling. And that's Miami, Cincinnati. Right now, Cincinnati, a 4-point favorite at home. And so this line, by the way, total sits at 47, which I think, given what these offenses are either capable of or have done, is maybe a little low. But 4 says that Cincinnati is the better team than Miami on a neutral field. Correct? And then, do you agree?
Well, it's sort of that way, right? The Dolphins last year benefited from what they're being dinged for this year, which was, last year on Thursday night, the famous one where that guard for Miami caught a touchdown pass that didn't count. The Dolphins played 90 defensive plays Sunday. Quarterback's banged up. They're on a short week. They got to go on the road and face a team that's pretty good. Last year, the Dolphins got to face the Ravens in such a spot where the Ravens had an overtime game against the Vikings where they had to come back and win. And ultimately they didn't have enough juice. I don't think that, I think, and then you also have the angles of rookie head coach on Thursday Night Football. That's going to ding them a little bit as well. So I think it's probably more that, the Bengals are probably maybe -1 on a neutral field. Your home field's not worth what it used to be, but then you add on all those situational factors, plus they might start Teddy Bridgewater. So I think that's all factoring in. I laid -188 with the Bengals. If you look at my BetStamp account, that's really kind of where I just wanted to grab a good number. But Bridgewater's a good backup, right? And good against the spread. So this is one where I'm not at current prices, like -4. I don't know if I can necessarily lay it with Cincinnati anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. Cincinnati, you kind of look at the sort of the matchups on the field, right? And both defenses, both defensive backfields are solid. You have some firepower offensively from the receiver position. And I think what's interesting here is there's a lot of reason. I agree with you on the spread, right? So I think it's basically a toss up. I think it's, which one would you power rank over the other in a similar spot, right? Where everyone's kind of got the same amount of rest and all those things. I think they're right there, and you're probably deciding, flipping a coin basically. But I think that the area that I would look to that's interesting is 47. We've seen a ton of games go under. I mean, it's been a dearth of offensive firepower thus far. I was looking at some of the data with our friend Timo Riske, PFF_Moo. And I mean, it's shocking. So the average quarterback grade in the NFL this season is like 70, and it was like 81 last season. The number of big time throws, I think I've talked about this before, to turnover worthy plays. There are like 65 fewer big time throws this season through 3 weeks than there were last season. And, you kind of equate that to like almost half a touchdown in terms of what a big time throw is worth over the court. So that's like one a game. That's like half a touchdown a game. But yet I look at this game and I go, man, do I really have faith in Tua figuring it out? Do I have faith in Teddy Bridgewater coming in and playing well? And then do I have faith in Joe Burrow? And I think the more that I, look at this game and look at the players, I do think that that now is the time to buy Joe Burrow. And he's had a couple of crappy games. They played the Jets. I think at this point there's kind of been a cooling on Joe Cool, if you will. And in this spot, as you just said, with the defense having played 90 plays in South Florida, traveling to Cincinnati, that place is going to be rocking. This is the spot where I would buy Joe Burrow. Do I buy it at -4? I'm with you. I don't think I'm going to buy it at -4. I think if I were to buy it, I would look to, I would look to the player prop market potentially, and see what I might be able to play there, or potentially the over. How do you feel about the over?
I just don't.
Are you scared?
I think the Bengals are good enough defensively to like make this be difficult. So, and the Dolphins are good enough defensively. I know they gave up a lot the other day to Buffalo, but they, stiffened in the red zone. They got good corners. Like, as far as like personnel wise, like they could match up, I think, a little bit with what the, with what the Bengals have on the outside. So I think it's a good question though. Like I certainly think that it's going to be tricky, for the Bengals to move the football. But if Tyreek, if these receivers go off, like, if these receivers go off, it's going to be, you're going to be, looking at this and saying, why the heck did we not see this type of thing? You know what I'm saying? So
it could be a track meet real quick,
but that has happened like in every single over basically this entire season, right? Like where, except for with the exception of Detroit games, and Detroit's game, it did go over the other day, didn't it? But like for the most part, like these teams have had a hard time, like, sustaining, excellence on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's been really rough, and it's borne out, in the results on the field. Interestingly, both of these teams, so this is interesting. The Bengals have the worst EPA per play on early downs. I mean, the worst. They're worse than Washington. They're worse than Tennessee, Seattle, New England's down there, the Jets. I mean, they're worse than everybody. And, that's something that I don't want to bet on that continuing for an entire season. I think that would be a sort of a fool's errand. And I'm not sure we can put our finger on why, this is happening to certain teams, but for the Bucks, for example, I throw them in there because they're you can see why, right? They've had a ton of injuries. Tom Brady's now single. Like, there's a ton of things that they had to put up with. The Bengals really haven't had any. It's kind of been like Lyle Collins has faced the best pass rushers in the NFL in the first 2 weeks. They like Joe Burrow just hasn't quite, gotten on the same page as his receivers, doesn't have as many of those big plays. He's taking, sacks still at a really high rate, even higher rate than he did the year before. And I just expect those things to even out a little bit. So, I mean, that would kind of be my angle towards the the total. It's also just my desire to watch some good football. So maybe that's the wrong thing. I'm coaching my bet there. But like that's got to stop. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's that they're going to continue to pound Joe Mixon into the ground on first and second down. They can continue to be minus EV and won't be stubborn. But I'm sort of hoping that at this point, that's going to revert a little bit to the mean.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, nothing takes the air out of that stadium like a Joe Mixon run. I've said that for years. And, our friend, Rob Pizzola is going to be, he's going there with Betfred, I believe. So I've warned him a number of times. I said, hey, make sure that, that, when the Joe Mixon runs happen, just, make sure that you're not talking too loudly. Because, that, you might get caught off guard, but yeah, that to me, I think like it's it's a tough game for me to bet the over, to be honest with you. Like I just really have a hard time, seeing points scored in the NFL right now where the average total is, basically, the average total is basically, 40 points so far this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Okay. Let's move on to the next game. We'll consider it. Maybe we'll get to, I think we should talk about Bills Ravens here, but is there a place you'd like to go before we get there?
Let's go. Let's do Jags Eagles. Let's see. Okay. Jags Eagles. Let's see what we believe to be the case here, for this game.
So, right now, 6.5, Eagles 6.5. This was 7 when it opened, if I remember correctly. Yes. When we talked about this.
Yeah, it got bet down a little bit.
Is that move warranted in your opinion?
The Jags have players that I think can make it hard on the Eagles. They have Devin Lloyd in the middle of the defense. You have obviously Trayvon Walker, who's going to set a good edge. I don't know if he's going to rush the passer that well. Defensive backs have been okay, at least good enough so far. So I think defensively, like they have the athletes to maybe make things hard on what the Eagles are trying to do. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, like the Eagles are just a team right now where it's like, do you really want to be laying 7.5 or 6.5? Sorry, with a quarterback like Jalen Hurts? And I think the answer to that question is increasingly yes. But do I want? Yeah, like I don't know. Like they're the only team that hasn't had a letdown game yet. I will say that. Yeah,
and they've also, it's interesting though. They have not played the strongest opponents thus far, right? And the Jags, it's interesting because you're buying them at the top. You'd be buying them at the top of the market here. And granted, you're getting the worst of this number. I think at 7, you take Jacksonville here. And there's a little bit of, they won that game against the Chargers, but there's kind of a lot of excuses being made, Herbert's injured, whatnot. They have some players that are playing incredibly good. They have 2 top 25 corners on the outside in Griffin and Campbell. Josh Allen of the Jaguars, not Josh Allen of the Bills, is the 6th highest graded edge rusher right now in the NFL. He'll be rushing over Jordan Mailata, who ranks 52nd out of 70 offensive tackles. You mentioned Trayvon Walker. He's on that other side against Lane Johnson, who's been phenomenal, maybe the best tackle in the NFL so far this year. But you've also got Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun, who are both playing well as well, over the middle of the field. And you think about Dallas Goedert and what he can do. So I agree with you. They do match up really, really well. And they have been one of the best, the top 3 in EPA per play on early down passes. And I believe just on early downs overall, let me check this here. Yeah, they're second only to the Ravens. And I think that's a huge testament to Doug Peterson, who, by the way, is coming here in a revenge game. And that, I hate to be all emotional here, but like Doug Peterson's the type of guy who that team is like, they're going to give that little extra bit of juice for Doug Peterson, right? I mean, he's basically liberated them of the worst coach in NFL history in Urban Meyer. And, there's not going to be that same kind of juice on the Eagles side. They've also had it incredibly easy in the second half of games, right? They have not had to score a point in the second half of games to cover and to win in convincing fashion. So, even though the Eagles have been the more impressive team, I think by just about every barometer so far, the Jags have played stiffer competition and actually are the better offense on early downs. So I think I'm saying, like, even though that you're getting kind of the worst of the number, maybe you wait until it gets maybe to 7 closer to kickoff. Maybe there's some Eagles money that comes in. And I would take the Jags at +7.
Yeah, and the Eagles are a team that over the last like 2 years, like there has been late support for the Eagles by these big betting groups. So you may be in a position to, like, if you wait on it, just like in the Minnesota, game, you might be able to get something fairly good as far as them against the number. So yeah, like, wait, if you like Jacksonville, wait on it, and if it doesn't get to 7, it was sort of never meant to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's no, I guess I tend to think that there will be a decent amount of late Eagles movement, especially given that it's at 6.5 right now. I'll be interested to see what the circa number is. I don't know if you've seen those. Have they come out yet? I've been heads down all day today, but that'd be interesting to see.
I've only seen the William Hill numbers, but I got to be honest, I've been kind of I'm a little bit out of it as far as those. Like, we have Ben Brown and I have one that's competitive, so we're excited for that. But it's been kind of a privilege so far with some of these ones. In college football, we're a little bit more competitive.
Any other bets on this game that I guess stick out to you? Total on this game is also 47, if I am looking at this correctly. Yes, 47. Or thinking about teasing this potentially, like, would you tease the Eagles? Any other angles here?
Teasing down is going to be, I don't know if you want to tease down in a situation where where there's so much variance, right? Like, there's been a lot, and you're not going through 7. So I would, if anything, I do think over 47 might be the thing. The problem with the Eagles games, the last 2 games, is that, as you said, they've scored 24 points in the first half and 0 points in the second half of both of those games. So if they get out ahead of the Jaguars, they might just push the envelope there. And, their pass rush is so good. They're so good at the line of scrimmage that if they get ahead in this game, they might, Jacksonville might not get an opportunity to score. Like in the Minnesota game, they ran the football in Minnesota enough where Minnesota only got like 3 possessions in the second half, and they threw 3 interceptions on them, of course. But it was, and Washington could just not move the football against them. So I get concerned about the over in the case where the Eagles run away with it. The only team that's really been able to come back on them at least a little bit is, the Detroit Lions.
Our Lions. By the way, Lions are a favorite this week. This was one of the games that we called out early in the week on our Monday column. As we liked, I think did we get Seahawks? Was it 6.5?
6, I think. Yep.
6. And now down to 4. Let's talk about that one briefly here. Cause I actually like a couple of things. I like the Seahawks. I think still at +4, but I like the Seahawks a little more as a money line underdog here, like +175, +180. And I know that's sacrilegious to say in front of you, but the Lions, as good as they are still playing like a bunch of close games. And Geno Smith has played a lot better than I think we've anticipated. And that offense has been more progressive than I think anyone would have anticipated. Is that against your religion, or can you kind of see where I'm coming at there?
Yeah, I mean, you have there's a reason this thing's down to 4. And I agree. Like, I think the reason it's gone from 6 to 4 is the reason that if you still like the Seahawks, just ignore the points and take the money line, because, I don't think 4 is ever the right number in this game. It's either 6 And somebody got after me on Twitter, like, how the hell? Look, I didn't know that the market would finally understand the Detroit Lions the way that I do. So yes, I did say that Detroit was only going to be a 2.5-point favorite. That was more me trying to mimic what the market would do, but the market has figured out the Detroit Lions, which is good for them. We're happy for them. Better late than never. But the fact is if like Ragnow, Swift, Chark, Reynolds, Amon-Ra St. Brown all don't play, then the Seahawks should almost be favored in this game. If they all play, the Seahawks should be a 6-point favorite, right? So that's where, okay, if you want to bet on the Seahawks, bet money line, but you're basically making a bet that either the Lions blow it, which they certainly can, they just did it against the Vikings, or everybody's not playing, and then you have a great number in your pocket.
Yeah, it's a good call out there. And the St. Brown injury, I mean, he came back and played in that game. So, I kind of expect him to figure that out. But in these games, like the Lions have played, they have been the only team that's been like a good bet, on the over because of their defense. And I could honestly see that again happening here, even with St. Brown potentially being a little bit banged up. But I think that's one. I don't think it's lock of the week material, Eric. I do have one. I do have a lock of the week bet that I'm excited about, but this is not one. So where would you like to go? Where would you like to go next?
Okay. Good question. I'm looking around the board and, to me, like, Buffalo -3, I know Green Line likes that. That one, I don't know. Saints +3 to me feels like a lock, but you're mostly seeing 2.5. I'm going to be, this is the one, and it's stinky because we took Washington last week.
Oh no.
But the Commanders getting 3 in Dallas against Cooper Rush, the 3-0 Cooper Rush. I like that. The Dallas Cowboys are not playing mistake-free football, boys. They're not, boys and girls. They're not playing well, right? They just played a bad Giants team, right? And they took advantage of it. CeeDee Lamb, finally made catches when he was missing catches early in the year, all this kind of stuff. I like the Commanders getting 3 in Dallas. Carson Wentz evening the
bouncing back
score for the Washington Commanders to 2-2 on the year.
Yeah, we say that now, and then Carson Wentz gets sacked for the 6th time by Micah Parsons.
Yeah. I mean, Parsons is great. These people that like don't want to compare him to Lawrence Taylor, it's like, okay, well, what do you want him to do now then?
By the way, how crazy is it that, and actually remember, this is a good plug for one of our friends, Mike Renner, whose new podcast, Talking Ball, is a great listen, as is his new daily show with Trevor Sikkema, It's Just Football, where they talk about just football for an hour every single day.
Which it
awesome.
Was like going to be It's Just Lunch, but
or It's Just Vibes. Yeah, it's also better than It's Just a Wendy's bathroom, which is apparently where Mike Renner ends up after a Notre Dame loss. But he in the draft guide, writing out Micah Parsons, actually wrote, this guy might just be the best pass rusher in the draft. Like, that's the kind of physical specimen that he is. And of course, you only find that out because DeMarcus Lawrence hurts himself, and they have to put Micah Parsons there, and he's absolutely incredible. But going forward, I mean, I feel like we're going to see a lot of teams now try this, where they are going to draft, players of that ilk and see what he can do there. Kind of similar to how I think NFL teams are trying to draft like the next Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I could definitely see that happening. I don't mind this one because you're buying the Commanders at the absolute bottom. You're buying the Cowboys and Cooper Rush it cannot get better for Cooper Rush at this point. He threw an absolute dime to CeeDee Lamb. He drops it. Somehow they come back, end up winning the game. And, he's played well. He's put some passes on the money, but I do like this spot considerably.
You're getting the better quarterback getting points, honestly. And
As
I know
scary as
that,
that is, as
and I
scary
and
as
I
that
know
is,
that
yeah.
Wentz sucks and all this kind of stuff. But like, I think, I don't know. Like, they also have great receivers, and like Trayvon Diggs is, he did the whole give up a decent amount and then
Mhm.
pick up all off type of thing. But I also think Scott Turner has some pride. He'll probably come back here and be okay. So that's kind of where my mind is at. But it's a tough week, man. Like,
It is.
I would say, Baltimore plus 3.5 has me in the fields, but I don't want to go against PFF's model, now that, even though I've handed it off to you guys. Like, I feel like that one's one that if I were just betting on vibes, I'd probably take Baltimore there.
It's now down to 3.
It is down to 3. So everybody has the same vibes as me. Bears, Giants looks like a disaster. Cleveland, Atlanta looks like a disaster. The Chargers, if the Chargers lost to Houston, I'd lose my mind. That's pretty hilarious. Jets, so, Seattle's another one. You talked about Seattle. We could also
So I have a thought here. Okay.
Saints, Broncos teaser.
Actually, it's similar. Before I reveal what it is, though, a quick reminder that you can go and place some bets, these bets perhaps, at DraftKings. The action is always there, and you can use promo code PFF, bet $5, and get $200 in free bets on DraftKings and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. So go download that ASAP, use promo code PFF, bet $5 on the teaser that I'm about to give you, and then get $200 in free bets that you can then play. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now, use promo code PFF, get $200 in free bets immediately that you can place on all the other good stuff at PFF and on PFF's app and .com. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show notes in the description for details. Also, the stock market for football, symbol SIMBULL. And it's not just football, it's all other sports as well. You can go buy and trade team stocks. A couple of interesting data points for you. Eagles are up 18% after the 3-0 start to the season. 2 in the Dolphins are up 14% since week 1. The Raiders are down 7%, probably should be more. Chicago is now the second cheapest team after dropping 2%. It's amazing that you can fall below 0, but the Chicago Bears have managed to do so. Go to Symbol by downloading the Symbol app on iOS by searching SIMBULL in the App Store and using promo code Forecast. Receive a team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. That's promo code Forecast, FORECAST. All right, here is the teaser that I like. So I saw Saints, and it makes sense to me. I get it, but I'm a little nervous, to be quite honest with you, Eric, about how bad they've looked in the first half of games. And without Sean Payton, potentially with Andy Dalton, this isn't quite prime time, but like Andy Dalton is going to feel like it's prime time by going to London. There's going to be something weird there, but I like where your head is at with Broncos plus 8.5 as the first leg.
Yep.
Okay. The second leg, I think, is potentially even more stinky. Okay.
Oh, God.
Even more stinky. And I think you may know where I'm heading with this, but it worked for us last week. Okay. And you know me. Okay. I am
So
loyal.
you're going Falcons plus 7.5.
You knew it. You know me so well.
Atlanta.
They are playing at home. Okay. They're playing the Cleveland Browns at home. Now, the Cleveland Browns have had a lot going on, a lot that they're dealing with. Obviously, Myles Garrett was in the hospital as of yesterday. Jacoby Brissett has played well. Don't get me wrong. 78.7 PFF grade. He has been good, but 96 passer rating under pressure. I think that's going to go down a little bit. As I mentioned, not only Myles Garrett, but Jadeveon Clowney is also questionable. And here's the thing, Eric. The Atlanta Falcons have the 6th best EPA per early down play.
They're playing well on offense. They're moving the football.
Their offense is good. Like, the fact that Mariota's a little mobile, they've got Cordero Patterson, they just figured out that Kyle Pitts exists. Like, I mean, to me, getting 7.5 at home against a team that is led by Jacoby Brissett, God, it's going to be wrong, but it feels so right now.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, that feels like the way that we have to do this. I think that, being on the Falcons, I remember in 2018 we had a lock of the week that was Falcons against Cleveland in Cleveland, and of course we lost that game.
Of course.
But I feel like it's time to go back to the well. Jacoby Brissett has played really well, and unfortunately, I feel like his time has come.
I think it has. So are we aligned? I guess maybe let's talk about Broncos Raiders for a second. Broncos out to 8.5 against a Raiders team that right now, I know the Broncos are getting a lot of press for, Russell Wilson not working out, all this stuff. Derek Carr has been as bad, if not worse. And things just do not look good. Speaking of vibes, do not look good there. So, I mean, I think that, the kind of thought here is the Broncos are still kind of playing with their backs up against the wall, but have fundamentally been better. And their defense has been really solid. Both edge rushers have been good, but Randy Gregory in particular, who'll be going up against the 62nd ranked tackle for the Raiders. We all know how incredible Derek Carr is when faced with a clean pocket or with a dirty pocket. And, Devontae Adams, they've had to go to Mac Hollins. I mean, Devontae Adams is getting a lot of attention. Pat Surtain has played really well. So is Ronald Darby, both top 40 cornerbacks in the NFL so far. So, getting is there any way this isn't a close game? I have a hard time seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some
let's
other.
do it. So Denver plus 8.5.
Okay, but hold on. There's some other teaser legs. Okay, that I just want to throw out. Want to exhaust these and make sure that we're making the right play here. You mentioned Saints out to 8.5 in London.
Yep.
The other ones that I would consider: Cardinals out to 7.5 in Carolina.
Yep.
The Tampa Bay Bucks at home out to 7, and the Rams in San Francisco out to 7.5.
Yeah, you would wait on the Bucks because what you don't want to have happen is have a teaser voided because one of the legs is played in a different stadium than anticipated. Additionally, if the game is played in a neutral site, the Bucks will probably be bigger underdogs than they were before. So that's one to really worry about there. I wouldn't put the Bucks in anything that depended on anything.
Yeah, that's fair. Cardinals and Rams, I guess, the Panthers stink and they beat the Saints. I don't care. They still stink. Are the Cardinals any good? No. But when two stinky teams play one another, right, the better quarterback, I think, is going to win out here. Kyler is better than Baker Mayfield. And in Rams Niners, I mean, this is simple. This is really simple. Go watch the Niners without Trent Williams. The handicap here is not all that deep. If Trent Williams can't be over there on the left side protecting the shit out of Jimmy Garoppolo, I am concerned.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Aaron Donald line up, on the edge and make some plays out there. They've also got great linebackers. So, George Kittle and also chasing down kind of the Deebo Samuel out of the backfield thing. So yeah, that to me is the handicap right there.
Gotcha. Yeah, the losing Trent Williams had as big of an effect on any non-quarterback in the league last week, I would say.
Yeah. Right? And that was scary. Okay, so are any of those tempting enough to get away from
No, I think it's Falcons, Broncos. Look, I want to fade the Vikings as much as anybody, but I get where you're coming to. I get that it's a different quarterback. And frankly, I think if we know that Dalton's starting, we're going to get +3 with New Orleans, and I'll take +3 with New Orleans.
Okay.
So
lock of the week is a teaser. Beautiful teaser. Denver Broncos +8.5 and our PFF Falcons. I don't know if they deserve that moniker yet. Members of the printing press who have been here for a while.
yeah, they know.
They know, they get it. If you're new, a member to the printing press, let's just say this. You know how Facebook used to have the it's complicated relationship status?
Yep, I love that.
And you can just kind of when you see that, you're like, man, I wonder what happened with these two. But you can imagine that at one point it was hot and steamy, and then it got hot and not steamy, and things really got bad. But then eventually they were like, well, we still do kind of really love each other in moments. It's complicated. That's us with the Falcons, because there was a point in time where we loved nothing more than betting on the Falcons, and they made us money, and then
they stopped making us money. In fact, they dumped
became
us
too painful.
I would imagine. What would you say over under? Let's just throw out some bets here.
Okay.
Over under on number of it's complicated relationships that have ended in marriage. And let's say marriages that lasted like let's say marriages that got through the rookie contract. So
how many happily married couples are there?
Right.
From an
like,
it's
look,
complicated.
with Marjorie Taylor Greene getting divorced today, like we know that marriage that was the pinnacle of what marriage was supposed to be. But yeah, what I'm saying is, like, let's say a marriage that gets through the rookie deal. So 4 years, 5th year option. How many it's complicated tags on Facebook resulted in those kind of what would you put that over under at?
I would say I would put the over under at like 2.5 out of every 100.
Yeah,
it's complicated.
I thought 10 at first, because
No.
I do think that people get married and then, but I would even say, like, how many relationships end in marriage, and you're probably thinking about like 1 out of every 10 maybe on Facebook. I know, maybe in the some
it's
of the
a different bar, right? You're only going into a relationship when it's like a big thing, and if you control for like the ages where it's like actually acceptable,
I would put it at 1% or less.
Okay, so you're going even lower than me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Because I think you have to take your number and divide it by 2 because of the number of marriages that actually make it through the rookie deal.
I see. So I think that's fair. Man, I would love to meet a couple that was like, you know what, we were once complicated on Facebook, and now we're happy.
The one that always got me was the open relationship ones. Because I had a friend, he doesn't listen. There's 0% chance of this. I had a friend named Marshall, and I'm like, my brother. And at the time, I wish I had this vocabulary, but I'm like, my brother in Christ. It's not an open relationship. You're just.
Is there an open relationship?
This is the 7-Eleven of relationships.
Is there an open relationship where the guy wins? Like that's the guy is not winning there when it's an open relationship on Facebook.
No.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so
either. Okay. We have a special treat for everybody here. Before we do, want to get through the rest of our great advertisements for all of you. No House Advantage is changing the game by offering the most dynamic fantasy sports platform that is out there. You can play pick'em contests versus other people for a shot at winning $250K in cash right now. It's really simple. Download the app, choose a contest, select your player props, earn points for correct picks, climb the leaderboard for your shot at big money every single day. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks. Bet on up to 5 players that are player prop over unders or individual player matchups across every sports league: NBA, NFL, MLB, PGA, MMA, NASCAR, the whole deal. I didn't hear F1, but maybe we'll get there eventually. F1 is back soon, very soon. Thank God. Sign up now with promo code FORECAST, FORECAST, at nohouseadvantage.com, or download the app on the App Store or wherever you get your apps. Your first deposit is matched up to $25 when you use promo code FORECAST. All right. This is the last podcast of September. It is also going to be the last podcast that you and I do solo as a band, as a group. And we want to celebrate it by telling some stories, some fun stories of this podcast, of our friendship, hopefully some ones that people will remember or enjoy. And send you off the right way. We cannot promise that neither of us will cry during this because we are only doing one take. But that brings me to the first story that I want to tell, which does not involve doing one take. So the origin of this podcast dates back to the time when Eric and I actually, before we even worked full-time at PFF, and we used to kind of sit on the phone and talk to one another about like football modeling. And, we started creating a betting model together, and we're betting on these things together. And eventually someone at PFF was like, what if you guys did a segment on the PFF NFL podcast with Sam and Steve? So we're like, oh, this is great. This is awesome. So we're both juiced about this. We're like, all right, we're going to record. I want to say, if I remember correctly, we were going to record at like 9 p.m. because both of us have, other jobs that we're doing. So it's 9 p.m. I would say it was like a 5-minute segment. All we were doing was talking about our lock of the week. It was probably 1 a.m. when we recorded our last take.
Yep.
I will never, ever forget that. I also feel terrible because we definitely recorded multiple fantastic takes that no one would have noticed anything. Probably the first one. And my dumbass was just like, oh, let's do one more time. Let's do one more time. Let's do one more time. But that was how this podcast was born. And thankfully, I don't know when the last time we ever did like multiple takes for something was, but that has not happened in a while.
I'm trying to remember. So like if we went back, so let me do betting week 1. So I remember you and I became friends because when I was a consultant for PFF, I held Wednesday morning analytic sessions, and I would take them from my basement. And I remember you gave a really cool talk about Tableau. And like, I'll be honest, at the time, there was not, and I don't want to, like, there was, the analytic talent at PFF had not borne out yet. Everybody now at PFF is amazing. Timo, Ben, Brad, Amelia, Richard, everybody, on the other side of the business too, Alexander. But at the time, I'm just like in a desert of like I was giving the talk every week. And then of course you give a talk. And I remember Skyping you, and I knew like when we were in data collection prior, like the fall, I remember seeing your name, right? Because I was doing like some Niners games. You were doing some Niners games. So I remember who you were. And then you gave it, and you were like, it sounds funny because you were one way with people you don't know. And then like once we got to know each other, I'm like, okay, this guy's got some pizzazz to him, right? So like I messaged you and I'm like, okay, we need to talk. And that was how our friendship originated. You and I first met each other in person. I thought that this was funny because as we were talking, you would always be like, oh, I'm going out to eat with my girlfriend and we're going here. And I'm like doing the Rolodex in my head, making what we were making at the time. And I'm like, interesting. And then I met you in the Cincinnati airport waiting to go to Rick Drummond's house. And you had holes in your socks. And I'm like, okay, so this guy pays for meals, but has holes in his socks. Now I get it. So I'm trying to think back to 2017 week 1. And I will say of course we did. We had Falcons against the spread. They did not cover against the Bears.
No.
We had Panthers against the Niners, and the Panthers did cover. We had over in Vikings Saints Monday night, and that pushed because Kai Forbath missed an extra point. And at that point, we started calling it the Kai Forbath Memorial Extra Point because we did point counterpoint. And then I want to say we had Packers. Was Packers our first lock of the week? Packers like minus that must have. So they beat the Seahawks 17-9. I want to say, and they were minus 2.5. I want to say that was our lock of the week, but I actually don't remember any. It could have been Rams too. Like the Rams winning, 46-9 against Scott Tolzien and the Colts. I actually don't remember which one was our our lock of the week that week?
Trying to think back. I
No, I do remember. It was Dallas against New York, and Dallas won 19-3.
That's
and we did win
our
first lock of the week.
Okay. I'm glad you said that because in my memory, what I was about to come out of my mouth was I feel like it was Dallas. And I remember so clearly because we did this whole thing. And I think people will be surprised to know that we've actually mellowed out a lot. But we would go in. I mean, if you listen to some of those podcasts, I mean, we went in. And by the way, this is going to get to my next story, but like we dismantled, tore apart Eli Manning. I mean, you would have thought that Eli Manning was like, a scarecrow based on what our hypothesis was of him playing in this game. And that was a no doubter. We started with a no doubter. In fact, if I remember correctly, our lock of the week, when we debuted it, I want to say started like 8-0 or something.
It was, so the first year we were 14-6-1. So I remember this vividly now because I remember going to my classroom and because we had Falcons week 2 and they covered 34-23. And then this is where we first aired. And I remember our boss, Rick Drummond at the time was like, we took Ravens against the spread in London against the Jags. We took Ravens -3 and they got killed 44-7. That was our first loss. And you remember it was the Mercedes Lewis had 3 touchdowns game. And, Warren Sharp, of course, like talking about all the 21 personnel and stuff, triggered us as well. So that was some fun. Those were fun times, but yeah, we went, and then we had the lock of the week where it was Saints +5 in the Minneapolis Miracle game. And that game landed 5 because of the extra point didn't get taken. Like that was a run. That was a journey season that we ended up doing pretty well. That was of course before Green Line came out in 2018, but those were fun times.
Yeah. It's, it's so funny to think back to those 14-6-1. So my next, my next story, I'm kind of debating which order, to tell this in, but my next story is from the podcast, and we used to record in our old office, and we had that kind of, if you go back and you look at the archives, you'll find these the very funny looking studio, and it was really hilarious, especially because you're a big dude, 6'5", 225, pure muscle, and you're towering over this desk, and it's a small little room. And, we sit in this thing, and we have this weird looking TV behind us. That's like really big and doesn't do anything. And it's just a funny setup. And we had a bet. Do you remember what the bet was?
So the first bet that I won, and then I lost a bunch of them against you, but the first one that I won, I can't remember but it was a Ruth Chris steak, right?
Yes, it was a Ruth Chris steak, but you lost a bet, and that bet required you to do something.
Oh, sure. So I bet. No, I didn't bet. So this is the misnomer. So we were at the Combine 2019, and we all had dinner together as a company. And like, if people don't know the dynamics of PFF, like you and I are, best of friends, but we're drastically different people in certain ways. And one of the ways is like you have, look at you. You're wearing a tank top, you got the shoulders. Everybody's a little bit jealous of you. And so when somebody like me, a friendly face, busts your balls, everybody is so happy that it happens, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here and everybody's more drunk than me because my brother, like we had the PFF party the night before, and I got shit-faced. And yes. I dropped my phone cracks. I think I gave Chris Collinsworth like a hug. I might have kissed him on the forehead. I don't know. And so that night before was a privilege for everybody. So the next day I'm like, look, I'm not drinking. And like we had a meeting with like the Tampa Bay Bucks the next day. Like we were meeting with all 32. So I don't care about giving out who we were. And we had a meeting at 7 a.m. and I showed up and I was hungover, but I got the job done. And that night I wasn't drinking. And everybody else was kind of a little shit-faced, including Rick. And, there was a story about yeah. Anyway, so I'm over here just giving you shit. And eventually you're just like, fuck, I'm gonna like, you're just angry with me. And then so Neil, like knowing that he could get you going, Neil see me lift weights before. He saw me, I think, overhead press or push press 225.
Mm-hmm.
So he figured I could overhead press 225. So he bet you that you would have to eat like basically the pizzas that Nathan Yankee eats all day. If I could do it,
I had to eat frozen pizza
right
for a week. Yeah.
And then yeah, he ended up having to because I couldn't do it. I got to like 205 and that was the highest I could go with the push press. So I had to wear the White Snake shirt.
Yes.
The White Snake origination, by the way, happened after Neil was angry with me about something petty, felt bad about it. And because one day I said I like White Snake, he got us White Snake tickets in Dayton. And so that, again, the tentacles here, but of course I had to wear on the podcast. And the funniest part was you got me the White Snake shirt, you cut it, and like my nipples were showing. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going on the podcast with this, like, this thing. I'm like, we'll wait till next week. And the funniest part was, you remember who we interviewed during that podcast? The venerable Fred Godelli. So the
my God, was that a Fred show?
Is me wearing a midriff. And the second part is us interviewing probably the best sports producer in the history of modern television. And yeah, so there's that.
By the way, the reason we did the cutoff was in honor of Zeke. So the midriff showing was a Zeke, an Ezekiel Elliott tribute. The picture lives, and you can find it on the internet if you are so inclined. So I encourage you to do so. My next favorite story is when we went to the Super Bowl together, and my Niners are playing your Chiefs. And the best part of this story is actually after the game, but I'll tell you how the game goes. We're sitting here. Chris got us tickets. It was amazing. We're like so stoked to be there. Have a great meal beforehand, show up. Everything is just perfect. And of course, the Niners get out to a lead. The way that I watch a football game is like, I can't speak. Like, I'm just like zoned in. I'm locked in. The way that you're coping is by congratulating me early for the Super Bowl victory, which is just fucking awful. So then we get to like the third quarter, and obviously the game starts to tighten up a little bit. You at this point realize you have a chance to win. You're like shaking with, nervousness. I can't, my mouth is sewn shut. Obviously the Chiefs end up winning. So we're trying to look for an Uber, and you are in the midst of having like 35 different conversations with Chiefs fans, all on your phone about the victory. And
anybody will listen to me on the outside. Anyone that'll listen. Like I'm Shecky Green out here. I'm just, patting people on the back. I'm having a great time.
Yeah, you've analyzed the game 45 times at this point. And we cannot get an Uber. We can't get a single, Uber to like accept. And then, so we're just walking. So we must have walked for like 2 hours. And eventually, I am so frustrated. I lost the Super Bowl. You're fucking.
Well, not only that, but you had a rich friend. And the funny thing about the Super Bowl, not to interrupt, but we went to the Barstool party.
That's right.
And we hung out with the founder of Cameo that night. And you're like, oh yeah, this is the founder of Cameo. We're friends. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, and we were hanging out with one of your friends, and we were trying to get in. It was raining sideways. The paper mache that was flowing down was literally caked on our shoes.
Yeah.
And your other friend like literally gave the door person like $2,000 to let us in early. And so it was a priv, and like
shout out Graham.
And we saw that both Collinsworth sons were there, and it was a good time. And and so you had another rich friend basically give you like a few grand, and again it happens, but you teased for your friend Niners out to +8 and under whatever it was, like 57 or something. And of course, with like 6 minutes left in the game, the Chiefs are down 10, and it's 20 to 10. So this thing's a lock. And of course, that last Damian Williams touchdown, the only thing I said the whole fourth quarter of that game was that me yelling, "Get down" at Damian Williams. And I think it was like the carnal part of me, not only wanting the game to be over, but also wanting your teaser to hit. And like your rich friend is like down a few grand because of this, like this teaser where you teased a total and a spread in the same game. So, but the
best part of this story though is you did not look up from your phone while walking for like an hour. And then finally, out of the corner of your eye, you notice a cab. And I swear to you guys, this man has never moved with more grace, fluidity. It was like it's like watching Aiden Hutchinson play football. Lateral slide in front of a car, dodges another car, and like grabs the cab on the like windshield and is like, "Are you free?" And like pulls open the door, and we get in this cab, and it then immediately, not immediately, like 5 minutes later, started just pouring, just absolutely pouring. Our phones were dying. Like if we didn't get in this cab, we might not be here today.
Well,
and
it was one of those things where I could tell because your phone died, and I had somebody who was like, "Look, you're my Uber rider," and they quit on me, and I'm like, and so, and like I could see how steamed you were, and like we were walking, and like by that time, I mean the weather was good in Miami, but like it was that one day where it rained that sloshed everything up, so your shoes were getting all, and I could just tell like you were about to kill somebody. So I was saving lives by doing that, but I may have broken like my ring finger slapping the window of that cab that I just randomly saw was open. I'm like, "I'll pay you twice as much as the fare if you get us home." And my favorite part of the cab ride, dead ass, was you and I, like me looking at you being like, "I'm pretty sweet, aren't I?" And he's like, "You're like, fuck you. I'm badass, ain't I?" And he's like, and you're like, "Shut up, Eric." And like I'm like trying to get you to affirm how great of a move that was for me.
Yeah.
And we drive by, and there's this big skyscraper, and it has the Chiefs symbol on it. And I look at you, and I'm like, "That's a good yellow." And you're like, "I hate you so much." It's like,
I don't remember that, probably because I was so
you were seething.
I've blacked that out in my oh my God, that's so funny. That whole trip is one, like we obviously have gone back to Super Bowls, but not to the actual game itself. And I don't know when I'll go again because I don't know when the Niners will be back. You might have a better shot at that given, well, I don't know. Your Chiefs are kind of disintegrating, but
it was awfully generous of Chris. And honestly, like we had Kevin Clark on the forecast when you looked over at me and you're like, you surprised me. And you've always been a little closer to Chris. And so you were like, you've been able to ask Chris for things more readily than me. I'm a little more timid. And so I knew that if we were going to the game, it would have been you to ask him. But Kevin Clark, who once famously called us the Lennon and McCartney of football analytics, which I find one of the greatest compliments that you and I could receive as a duo. He was on the air, and I got a picture of it. It's actually it's the first ever thing I posted on Instagram was the picture of you pointing at me and telling me you had tickets.
That's right.
The look on my face, and Kevin Clark kind of being in the middle of that. So if you want to look at our Instagram for that, another great moment in PFF forecast history.
And what's amazing is how good your Instagram has gotten since.
I'm very endearing on Instagram. I will say that. Very endearing. TikTok as well. I was just giving out winners last week. By the way, if you want a winner, I'm going to give one more to the printing press. Thursday night, tomorrow night, the South Carolina State Bulldogs, an FCS team, plus 39.5 on Barstool against the South Carolina Gamecocks. Lock it up.
Wow. You're just a generous man is really what you are. Other really good stories. I mean, there's so many, to kind of tell. A couple that, I won't get into too much detail here, but for people that don't know, Eric has done the kind of comedic portion of our company parties. And let me just say that I don't know if I think you will do this at some point in your life, but the like stand-up comedy routine is one that you really enjoy and have gotten pretty good at. And some of the jabs have been really good. I won't tell the stories here because I don't think anyone will totally get them. But let's just say some comedic references to when we changed our logo the first time, and no one could tell the actual difference. And it was pretty darn funny. And you managed to make a Chris Collinsworth joke that landed, that he really appreciated. So
I think Chris said to me, quote, "I didn't know you were funny," and I'm like, I also have to thank Austin Gale, who was my. But the thing that the difference was, and I think this is like my temperament, Austin would get drunk and angrily give his version of the stand-up, whereas I would be sober and have fun with it. There were even jabs, there were jabs at you that I thought were funny. Obviously, there was the time when you got your haircut in Cincinnati, the only time, and I got it, and I don't mean to so you and I used to work out together at the Y. We used to play basketball together at the Y. People will be very surprised that when I actually beat you, you would kick the ball into the rafters and swear at so hard that the homeless people next to the Y could hear you.
That is a good story, actually.
So,
yeah.
But the best one was when you went and it was our first fall there. And our first fall at PFF, I missed being a professor. I think you had to talk me into not going back to the academia, which I really appreciate. And then you hated living in Cincinnati. And so we both kind of were tense, right? And so you got your haircut and the guy cut it so that would part the other way. And look, I'm somebody that will tell you to calm the fuck down when you're being neurotic and all that kind of stuff. But my brother in Christ cut it the wrong way. And so we're in there and we're in the gym and we do rowing first, right? And I think you get done with the rep and you just throw the handle at the rowing machine when you're done. You're so angry. And and God bless Steve. I mean this, but I looked at you and I said, at least you don't have a Jerry curl like Steve. And dead ass, you looked me in the face and go, my standards are so much higher than that. I'm like, okay, I can't do it I can't help this man anymore. I'm just going to be there, be supportive. So I sit there, we do, we get done. We start walking down the street. And one of your biggest triggers, without a doubt, was homeless people blowing cigarette smoke in your face. And I get it. Again, all these things in a vacuum are reasonable things to be angry at. But they all happened to you in one day, which is perfect. Because I don't know why you did this, because I think it was because you were still ranting about your hair. But then this poor homeless person blew cigarette smoke 5 feet away from you. And I want to say that you turned to her and just yelled the F word in her face. And honest to God, it was the funniest time because, again, like I said, most people, if you fuck up my hair, I'm going to be mad. So if you fuck up your hair, I can understand, right? There's been a lot of invested in here. This is great clips and a bunch of hymns now that I'm losing my hair a little bit. You've put, that's a collection of $100 or more haircuts that's on the top of your head. So when somebody fucks that up, it'd be like somebody going into my 401k and turning it onto the wrong thing. So I get that. But it manifesting itself the way it did surprised even me a little bit.
What made it worse was that I was traveling that weekend, because I used to travel with Sunday Night Football. And, I was going to show up, in my opinion, looking like a complete and utter moron.
Which you looked fine.
Right.
Get it was the funniest part about it is you looked great. It was fine, but you just having a different sided part. I would imagine there's somebody else who's detail oriented like you who would notice it, and it would just drive you insane that they also noticed it.
Right. I'm sure. And in my head, it was probably Al Michaels was the one that would notice it, and it would, ruin my life. So maybe the last story I'll tell, but is one of my favorites, is the last Chiefs Super Bowl that that we attended in person, but not actually at the game. Chiefs Bucks, and we had, so one of my favorite things about this is with this podcast, and this is where I'm going to try not to get too emotional, but for those of you that don't know, Eric and I worked so closely together at the beginning of our careers that, we were right next to each other, desk to desk. There wasn't a word that you said on the podcast that ever surprised me because I knew what you thought. We'd talked about everything 45 times.
Yeah.
We ideated on features and model selection and all this different stuff. And, by the time that we got kind of further on in our careers, to the point where we're at right now, which is, this is our time to talk and to have conversation. And it's it's truly one of the few joys that I have every single week. And we've gotten to the point where, our conversations in the podcast really were meaningful in that way. And I think it made for a better product. Hopefully the printing press agrees as well. But this is kind of where we sort of got the syndicate that maybe I hold near and dearest to my heart, which was the National Anthem Syndicate. And so we have National Anthem over. It was a duet. And it was one of the few times that I have contributed meaningfully to the analytics community, which was in doing some keen research on the fact that, a duet was going to go over this total here, and there hadn't been one in forever and whatever. So we have all of this money on the national anthem. Of course, it's the Chiefs and the Bucks. So we have money on everything, every which way. We're levered up to the tits on the Chiefs. And you pre-gamed for this game at like 1 p.m.
I got to Austin Gale's apartment, which was just like a few floors above or below your apartment. And we had bought you your favorite tequila. We had bought me my favorite, which was Woodford Reserve, my favorite bourbon. And we were gonna go to Jeff Ruby's for dinner, or
and
like
an early meal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm in the gym and I get a text from Austin. He says, Eric is at my apartment. And it's like 1 p.m. And I was like, oh my God. And he goes, and the next thing he says, and he's already halfway through a bottle of bourbon. And I was like, well, this is going to be one hell of a fucking day. And so we meet up, we go get this early meal at Jeff Ruby's. And let me just say that the vibes when the national anthem went over, I don't know if they've ever been higher in a single room. And of course, we know how the game plays out.
Yeah.
Your apology to Chiefs Kingdom. So we get on the podcast and you are barely awake, barely living, but you managed to get the words out. I want to apologize to Chiefs Kingdom. And I don't know if I died inside. It was the funniest thing that I think I've ever heard. That podcast was an absolute
I had privilege. Like the saddest thing about that show was I was way more drunk at halftime of that game than I was on the podcast. Like I had blacked in. I blacked in for that show, but I was still like, my eyes were kind of like, and my trip to the sports book to cash the tickets I did win that day was like the equivalent of the walk of shame. It was, I literally got up and put the Bucks helmet above the Chiefs helmet in the studio just to signify the truth that happened that day, which was that Tampa Bay was better. But yeah, that was like when the Weeknd was doing the halftime show, I honestly almost had a stroke, or a seizure, when he was doing that was a rough day.
A lot of people did.
I'd like to see the Chiefs get back to the Super Bowl. So, and that brings me back to maybe my last part, which was, so you have, you're obviously, one of my best friends, a person I admire greatly. The last year's AFC and NFC title game, you, of course, you run half of PFF, if not more at this point. And your whole team is out there in Vegas at Stadium Swim. I go to Kansas City to stay with Seren Petro to go to the Chiefs AFC title game. The Chiefs lose, your Niners lose, you lose your voice in cheering with everybody at Stadium Swim. we can't even run the Sunday show because you don't have a voice. The next day, you have barely any voice. And I don't know if two men were more, and the Niners covered, so you still won money, but two men more down bad than you and I in that Monday, me recording from KC. So, I mean, we've had so many, like, and I don't want to, I'm going to lose my mind here. But we've had so many good times, and, you know, I'll never forget, you know, this show and what it's meant to me.
So many. I mean, the preparation for the show in the early days, the, you know, long nights spent trying to figure out, you know, how to build our initial models when we started this out. You know, the syndicates that we've run successfully, traded many rookie cards for, members of the press will get that. The fact that we have the printing press, and I think that's the coolest thing. And, you know, for everyone that has managed to listen this far, maybe there's a couple of you, this was for Eric and I as much as anything, but, you know, I think that's a story that, doesn't need to be told here because it continues on. And, I just think that that's so cool. And, you know, you're, of course, one of my best friends, one of my favorite people on planet Earth. And, you know, our friendship gets to continue. The printing press gets to continue. There's no rule against us being able to call each other up and, you know, guess the lines with one another. And, you know, this, the fact that this gets to continue, this podcast gets to continue is because of you and what you've done. And I love you, man. I mean that from the absolute bottom of my heart. For anyone that is curious what's going to happen with this podcast, it's going to continue. We're not going to try and replace one of the best people on planet Earth in Eric Eager. So you'll have to tune in on Sunday to see what we do, but we wouldn't be doing it if it weren't for you, man. And I love you. That's all I got to say.
Love you too, man.
That was our podcast. We love you all. We'll see you on Sunday.